The first symptom of debt isn't missed payments. It's silence. You start avoiding phone calls. You stop opening mail. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later. And before you realize it, debt has taken more than your money. It's taken your peace. Maybe right now, you're lying awake at 3 a.m., your mind racing through numbers. The mortgage, the credit cards, the medical bills. Your heart is pounding. Your stomach is tight. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep because your brain won't stop calculating, catastrophizing, running through scenarios where everything falls apart. Have you ever felt like debt was controlling your thoughts more than you were? Tell me in the comments, what does financial stress feel like in your body? Your story might help someone else realize they're not alone. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how debt affects your brain, your body, and your relationships. Not to scare you, but to help you understand what's happening so you can fight back effectively. We'll talk about the neuroscience of financial stress, the psychology of shame, and most importantly, the concrete steps that actually restore your mental health while you're dealing with debt. Quick reminder, this is educational information about the psychology and physiology of financial stress, not medical or mental health advice. If you're in crisis, please reach out to professional support. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. Debt changes how your brain works. This isn't metaphorical. This isn't just feeling stressed. This is measurable, physiological change in your nervous system and brain chemistry. When you're under financial stress, your body stays in survival mode. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, remains elevated. Your heart rate increases. Your blood pressure rises. Your digestive system slows down. Your immune system weakens. This is the same response your ancestors had when facing a physical threat, a predator, a natural disaster, an enemy. Your body is designed to handle acute stress. Threat appears, you fight or flee. Threat passes, you recover. But financial stress isn't acute. It's chronic. The threat never passes. Every day you wake up, the debt is still there. The bills are still due. The collectors are still calling. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a bear chasing you and a $50,000 debt chasing you. Both activate the same survival circuits. But you can't fight debt. You can't run from it. So your body stays locked in high alert, flooding your system with stress hormones month after month, sometimes year after year. Here's what happens to your brain under chronic financial stress. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, impulse control, and rational thinking, literally starts to shut down. Blood flow and activity decrease in this region when you're under sustained stress. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the fear and emotion center, becomes hyperactive. It's scanning constantly for threats, finding them everywhere, amplifying your anxiety. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't you being weak or dramatic. This is neurobiology. Studies using fMRI scans show that people experiencing financial scarcity have measurably different brain activity patterns than people who feel financially secure. The scarcity itself changes how you think. Princeton researchers Eldar Shafir and Senthil Mullainathan documented this in their book, Scarcity. They found that financial stress consumes cognitive bandwidth. Essentially, it takes up mental space that you'd normally use for everything else. It's like having multiple browser tabs open in your mind at all times, all running calculations about money, all draining your mental battery. This is why, when you're in debt, you might find yourself forgetting appointments, losing track of conversations, making mistakes at work. It's not that you're becoming less intelligent, it's that your cognitive resources are being hijacked by financial worry. And here's where it gets worse. When your prefrontal cortex is impaired and your amygdala is overactive, you start making worse financial decisions. You become more impulsive. You focus on immediate relief rather than long-term solutions. This is why people under extreme financial stress sometimes make choices that seem irrational from the outside, taking out payday loans at 400% APR, gambling, ignoring debt completely. It's not stupidity, it's cognitive overload. Your brain under financial stress is like a computer running too many programs at once. Everything slows down, things crash. You can't process new information effectively. And the cruelest part? The worse your financial situation gets, the worse your decision making becomes, which often makes the financial situation even worse. It's a vicious cycle powered by brain chemistry. Let's talk about what chronic financial stress does to your body, because this goes far beyond just feeling anxious. The elevated cortisol we talked about, that doesn't just affect your mood, it affects every system in your body. Cardiovascular system. Chronic stress is a major risk factor for heart disease. When your body is constantly in fight or flight mode, your blood pressure stays elevated. Your heart works harder. Over time, this damages your cardiovascular system. Studies show that people with high levels of financial stress have significantly increased rates of heart attacks and strokes, even after controlling for other factors like diet and exercise. Immune system. Prolonged cortisol elevation suppresses your immune function. You get sick more often. You take longer to heal from injuries. You're more susceptible to infections. Have you noticed that when you're really stressed about money, you seem to catch every cold going around? That's not coincidence. Your immune system is being suppressed by stress hormones. Digestive system. Ever notice how financial stress affects your stomach? Nausea, loss of appetite, or conversely stress eating and weight gain. Irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux. These aren't separate issues. They're directly connected to your stress response. Your gut and your brain are in constant communication through the vagus nerve, and chronic stress disrupts that entire system. Sleep. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of insomnia. You lie awake worrying. You fall asleep but wake up at 3 a.m. with your mind racing about money. Or you sleep too much because depression makes you want to escape. Either way, poor sleep makes everything worse. Sleep deprivation impairs the prefrontal cortex even further, makes emotional regulation harder, weakens your immune system, and increases your risk of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Chronic pain. There's strong evidence linking financial stress to chronic pain conditions, tension headaches, migraines, back pain, muscle tension. When you're constantly stressed, your muscles stay contracted. Over months and years, this creates real physical pain. You might think you're just stressed, but your body is literally hurting. And here's something most people don't realize. The relationship between financial stress and health creates another vicious cycle. Financial stress makes you sick. Being sick costs money. Medical bills, time off work, reduced productivity. This creates more financial stress, which makes you sicker. People in debt are more likely to delay or skip necessary medical care because they can't afford it, which leads to worse health outcomes, which leads to more debt. One study found that people with high debt-to-asset ratios were significantly more likely to report poor health, even after controlling for income. It's not just about being poor. It's specifically about being in debt, owing money, feeling trapped. The psychological weight of debt creates measurable physical damage. Now let's talk about the emotional and psychological damage, because this is often the hardest part. Debt doesn't just stress you out. It fundamentally changes how you see yourself and how you interact with the world. Shame is the dominant emotion of debt. Not guilt. Shame. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. Guilt is about actions. Shame is about identity. When you're in debt, especially if it feels overwhelming or if you've been in debt for a long time, you start to internalize it. You start to believe that being in debt means you're irresponsible, lazy, stupid, a failure as an adult. This shame is reinforced everywhere. Society treats debt as a moral failing. People talk about living within your means as if it's entirely under your control, as if medical emergencies and job losses and economic crashes don't exist. The media shows you images of successful people who manage their money wisely, while implying that if you're struggling, it's because you didn't. Debt collectors use shame as a weapon, deliberately trying to make you feel like a bad person who needs to do the right thing and pay. And shame is toxic because shame demands secrecy. When you feel ashamed, you hide. You don't tell your partner how bad it really is. You don't tell your parents. You definitely don't tell your friends. You start declining invitations because you can't afford to go out, but you don't say that. You make excuses. You smile and say, "I'm fine," when people ask how you're doing, while internally, you're drowning. This isolation makes everything worse. Humans are social creatures. We're wired for connection. When you cut yourself off from your support network because of shame, you're depriving yourself of one of the most important buffers against stress. Studies show that social isolation is as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, and early death. Depression and anxiety are epidemic among people in debt. One study found that people with debt were 3 times more likely to have mental health problems. Another found that people with unmanageable debt were significantly more likely to experience suicidal ideation. This isn't weakness. This isn't overreacting. This is a predictable, documented response to chronic stress and shame. Depression from debt looks like this. You wake up and immediately feel heavy. Everything feels pointless. What's the point of going to work when you're just going to give all the money to creditors? What's the point of trying to budget when the numbers don't add up no matter what you do? You lose interest in things you used to enjoy. You withdraw from people. You might think about suicide, not necessarily because you want to die, but because you want the pain to stop and you can't see any other way out. Anxiety from debt is constant hypervigilance. Every phone call triggers panic. Every piece of mail might be a collection notice or a lawsuit. You start having panic attacks, heart racing, can't breathe, feeling like you're going to die. You catastrophize. They're going to sue me, take my house, garnish my wages, ruin my life. Your mind races through worst-case scenarios on an endless loop. And here's what makes this particularly cruel. When you're depressed and anxious, it becomes even harder to deal with the debt. You avoid phone calls and mail because facing it triggers panic attacks. You can't make decisions because you're cognitively impaired by stress and depression. You put things off because the overwhelm is too much. This avoidance creates more problems, more late fees, more damage to your credit, more calls from collectors, which creates more depression and anxiety. Another vicious cycle. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of divorce and relationship conflict. Money problems don't stay contained to bank accounts. They poison relationships. Let me show you how. First, there's the direct conflict. If you share finances with a partner, debt creates constant tension. Who spent what? Whose fault is this? Why did you buy that? Can we afford this? Every purchase becomes a potential argument. Every bill that comes in the mail is a reminder of the problem. You start resenting each other. One person might be more worried about money than the other, creating an imbalance where one person feels like the responsible one and the other feels controlled or criticized. Even if the debt existed before the relationship, it affects both of you. Your stress spills over. You're irritable, withdrawn, not present. Your partner can feel the distance but might not understand why. If you're hiding the full extent of the debt out of shame, there's a lie sitting between you, eroding trust. Then there's the loss of intimacy. It's hard to feel romantic or sexual when you're consumed by financial worry. Your libido decreases under chronic stress. That's physiological, not just psychological. But also, intimacy requires presence, vulnerability, connection. When your mind is constantly spinning about debt, you're not really there with your partner. You're physically present but mentally elsewhere, running calculations, worrying, planning. Financial stress also affects how you parent. You're shorter with your kids, you're less patient, you can't afford the things they want or need, and you feel guilty. You might overcompensate by spending money you don't have, going further into debt to try to give them a normal childhood. Or you become controlling about every small expense, creating tension and resentment. Kids pick up on stress even if you don't talk about money around them. They feel the tension in the house. They worry. Friendships suffer too. You stop going out because you can't afford it. You decline invitations. Eventually, people stop inviting you. You feel left out, but also relieved because at least you don't have to make excuses. Your social circle shrinks. The friendships that remain become more superficial because you're not being honest about what you're going through. And here's the trap. The people who care about you might want to help, but you're too ashamed to let them. Maybe they'd offer a loan, or at least emotional support. But you're carrying this burden alone because admitting it feels like admitting failure. The isolation compounds. You're stressed, which makes you irritable and withdrawn, which damages your relationships, which increases your isolation, which increases your stress. You end up alone with your worry, which is exactly where you're most vulnerable to depression and poor decision-making. Let's talk about why you avoid dealing with debt, even though you know avoidance makes it worse. This isn't about willpower or discipline. This is about how your brain processes threat and reward under stress. When you think about opening that letter from the collection agency or checking your bank balance, your amygdala registers it as a threat. It fires off alarm signals. Your body floods with stress hormones. You feel anxious, panicked, maybe physically sick. This is called anticipatory anxiety. Your brain is predicting pain and trying to protect you from it. Now, when you avoid opening the letter, something interesting happens. Immediate relief. The threat goes away, at least temporarily. Your anxiety decreases. Your nervous system calms down a bit. This relief is a reward. Your brain learns. Avoidance equals relief. Do it again. This is operant conditioning. Your brain is literally training you to avoid anything related to debt because avoidance provides immediate emotional relief. The fact that avoidance creates bigger problems later doesn't matter to your amygdala. The amygdala doesn't do long-term planning. It deals in immediate threat and immediate safety. Right now, not looking at the problem feels safer than looking at it. This is why people sometimes go months or even years without opening mail from creditors. It's why you might know you need to call and negotiate, but you keep putting it off. It's not laziness. It's not stupidity. It's a learned avoidance response that's being reinforced every single time you avoid the stimulus and feel that wash of relief. Breaking this cycle requires understanding that the anxiety you feel before dealing with debt is actually worse than what happens when you actually deal with it. The anticipation, the dread, the catastrophizing, the what-if thoughts, that's often more painful than the reality. When you finally open the letter, it usually contains information, not a disaster. When you finally check your bank balance, you see numbers, not the end of the world. But your brain doesn't know this until you prove it. You have to override the avoidance response, face the thing you're avoiding, and survive it. Once your brain learns, I faced the debt and I survived, the avoidance response starts to weaken. But this requires deliberately doing the uncomfortable thing, which is incredibly hard when you're already stressed and depleted. This is why so many people only deal with debt when forced to by external circumstances. A lawsuit, a garnishment, a spouse discovering the truth. The external pressure finally becomes greater than the internal resistance. But you don't have to wait for that. You can choose to face it on your terms, which is always less traumatic than being forced. So how do you fight back? How do you protect your mental health while dealing with debt? Let's talk about strategies that are grounded in psychology and neuroscience, not just generic think positive advice. First, externalize the numbers. As long as the debt exists as a vague, overwhelming mass in your head, it will torture you. Your brain can't process a lot of debt. It just loops on fear. But your brain can process specific numbers. Sit down with a piece of paper or a spreadsheet. Write down every debt, creditor name, balance, interest rate, minimum payment, all of it. This is hard. You will feel anxious doing it. Your hands might shake. You might cry. That's okay. Feel the feelings and do it anyway. Because here's what happens. Once it's written down, it's no longer an undefined monster. It's data. It's information you can work with. The fear lives in the unknown, not in the facts. Seeing $47,382 is less scary than a crushing amount of debt I can't think about. Once you have the numbers external to your mind, your prefrontal cortex can start engaging again. You can make a plan, you can prioritize, you can calculate. You're no longer stuck in amygdala-driven panic. You're using the rational part of your brain again. Second, separate identity from circumstance. You need to actively, consciously separate who you are from what you owe. Debt is a situation. It's not your identity. This requires challenging the thoughts that say, I'm a failure, or I'm worthless, or I'm stupid. When those thoughts come up, and they will, notice them and replace them. I'm not a failure. I'm a person dealing with a difficult financial situation. That doesn't define my worth as a human being. This isn't just positive thinking. This is cognitive restructuring, a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. Your thoughts create your emotions. If you think, I'm worthless because I'm in debt, you'll feel shame and depression. If you think, I'm dealing with debt, which is a problem I can work on, you'll feel more neutral, maybe even slightly empowered. Same situation, different interpretation, completely different emotional outcome. Write this down somewhere you'll see it daily. My debt is not my identity. I am a person with worth and dignity regardless of my financial situation. Say it out loud even if you don't fully believe it yet. Your brain will start to internalize it. Third, take back control of communication. One of the most damaging aspects of debt is feeling powerless, especially when collectors are calling constantly. You feel hunted. You feel like they control when and how you engage. But you can take that control back. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, you have the right to tell third-party collectors to communicate with you only in writing. Send a letter, certified mail with return receipt, saying, I am requesting that all communication regarding this alleged debt be in writing only. Do not contact me by phone. Keep a copy. Once it's in writing, you control the pace. You decide when to open the letter. You decide when to respond. You're no longer ambushed by phone calls that spike your anxiety. This single action can dramatically reduce your daily stress because you've eliminated the constant vigilance, the jumping every time the phone rings. This isn't about avoiding responsibility. This is about engaging on your terms, in a way that doesn't keep your nervous system in constant fight or flight mode. Fourth, build in nervous system regulation. Your body is stuck in threat mode. You need to actively signal safety to your nervous system. This sounds abstract, but it's practical. Deep breathing. When you're anxious about debt, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, which maintains the stress response. Deliberately slow your breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. The longer exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode. Do this for 2 minutes and you'll feel your heart rate slow, your muscles relax slightly. Your amygdala gets the message, we're not in immediate danger right now. Movement. Go for a walk, do yoga, dance in your living room, anything that gets your body moving. Exercise metabolizes stress hormones. It releases endorphins. It gives your racing mind something else to focus on. Even 10 minutes helps. Grounding. When anxiety about debt spirals, ground yourself in the present moment. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This interrupts the catastrophizing. It reminds your brain, right now, in this moment, I am physically safe. The debt exists, but I'm not in danger right now. These aren't distractions or avoidance. These are tools to regulate your nervous system so that you can think clearly enough to actually address the debt. You can't make good decisions when your amygdala is running the show. You need your prefrontal cortex online. Fifth, ritualize one small action daily. Overwhelm leads to paralysis. When the problem feels too big, you do nothing. So make it smaller. Choose one tiny action related to managing your debt and do it every day. Maybe it's checking your bank balance every morning. Maybe it's putting $5 in a savings account. Maybe it's reading one article about debt strategy. Maybe it's crossing one item off a to-do list related to dealing with a creditor. The action matters less than the consistency. What you're doing is building a sense of agency. Every small action says to your brain, I'm not helpless, I can do things that affect my situation. Over time, this rewires the learned helplessness that debt creates. You stop being someone debt happens to and start being someone who's actively managing a difficult situation. Sixth, connect. Don't isolate. This is hard because shame tells you to hide, but isolation makes everything worse. You need to tell someone, a friend, a family member, a therapist, even an anonymous online support group. Just saying the words out loud, I'm really struggling with debt and I'm scared, reduces the power of shame. You don't need them to fix it or give you money. You just need to not be alone with it. Connection is protective. It buffers against stress. It reminds you that you're still part of the human community, that you're worthy of care and support, even when you're struggling. If you don't feel comfortable telling someone you know, talk to a professional. Non-profit credit counseling agencies offer free or low-cost consultations. Many therapists understand financial stress and can help you process the emotions while you work on the practical side. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7 if the depression or anxiety becomes overwhelming. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's strategic. You wouldn't try to perform surgery on yourself. You wouldn't try to build a house with no training. Why would you try to navigate complex financial and psychological stress without support? Let's be clear about something. If you're having thoughts of suicide, if you're using substances to cope, if you can't function at work or in your relationships, if you're experiencing panic attacks or severe depression, you need professional help. Not eventually. Now. Financial stress can trigger or worsen serious mental health conditions. Depression, anxiety disorders, PTSD, substance use disorders. These are medical conditions, not character flaws, and they require treatment. You cannot just think positive your way out of clinical depression. You cannot just relax your way out of an anxiety disorder. Here's how to know if you need professional help. If you're having persistent thoughts of death or suicide, even if you're not planning to act on them, even if you're just thinking, everyone would be better off without me, or I wish I could just disappear, that's a red flag. Call 988 or go to an emergency room. This is serious. If you're using alcohol, drugs, or prescription medications in ways you know aren't healthy to cope with the stress, if you're drinking more than usual, if you're taking pills that aren't prescribed to you, if you're using substances to numb out, you need help. Substance use as a coping mechanism for financial stress is common and dangerous. If you can't sleep for more than a few hours a night for weeks on end, or if you're sleeping 12 plus hours a day and still exhausted, that's a sign your body is overwhelmed. Sleep disturbances of that severity require intervention. If you're having panic attacks, sudden episodes of intense fear with physical symptoms like racing heart, difficulty breathing, chest pain, dizziness, especially if they're frequent or severe, you need treatment. Panic disorder is treatable. If you've withdrawn from all social contact, if you can't get out of bed, if basic self-care feels impossible, if you've stopped caring about things that used to matter to you, these are symptoms of major depression, which is a medical condition that requires treatment. Many people don't seek help because they think therapy is expensive and they're already in debt. But there are options. Community mental health centers offer sliding scale fees based on income. Many therapists offer reduced rates for financial hardship. Some employers have employee assistance programs that provide free short-term counseling. Online therapy platforms like BetterHelp or Talkspace are often cheaper than traditional therapy. Even calling a crisis line when you're overwhelmed, that's free support available right now. And here's something important. Treating the mental health impact of debt often makes it easier to actually deal with the debt. When your depression lifts even a little, you have more energy to make phone calls, review paperwork, make decisions. When your anxiety is managed, you can think more clearly. Mental health treatment isn't a luxury when you're in debt. It's a practical tool that helps you function well enough to solve the problem. As you work through debt, you also need to start rebuilding a healthier relationship with money and with yourself. This is about the long game, not just getting out of debt, but staying out and building a life where financial stress doesn't control you. First, understand that your relationship with money was shaped by years of experiences, messages from family, cultural values, and probably some traumatic financial events. You didn't develop your money habits in a vacuum. Maybe you grew up poor and developed scarcity thinking. Maybe your parents fought about money and you learned that money equals conflict. Maybe you were never taught anything about personal finance and you're figuring it out the hard way. Whatever your history, you can't shame yourself into better financial behavior. Shame doesn't motivate positive change. It motivates hiding and avoidance. Instead, approach yourself with curiosity. Why do I make the financial choices I make? What am I trying to meet with these purchases? What do I believe about money? Often, overspending is about trying to meet emotional needs with material purchases. You're stressed, so you buy something to feel better. You feel inadequate, so you buy things that make you feel successful. You're lonely, so you go shopping for the human interaction. Understanding the underlying need lets you find healthier, cheaper ways to meet it. Second, develop financial self-efficacy, the belief that you can manage money effectively. Right now, you probably feel like you're terrible with money, but financial skills are learnable. You're not inherently bad at this. You just haven't learned the skills yet, or you're dealing with circumstances that would challenge anyone. Start building competence with small wins. Track your spending for a week. Create a simple budget. Save $10. Open a high-yield savings account. Read a book about personal finance. Each small action builds your sense of, I can do this. Third, redefine what financial success means to you. The culture tells you that success is a certain income level, owning a home, having luxury goods. But maybe for you, success is paying your bills on time without anxiety. Maybe it's having 3 months of expenses saved. Maybe it's being debt-free, even if you're not wealthy. Define success on your own terms based on what brings you peace, not what impresses others. Fourth, practice financial self-care. Just like physical self-care, eating well, exercising, sleeping, there's financial self-care. This means checking your accounts regularly so you're never surprised. Knowing where your money goes. Having systems that make managing money easier. Automatic bill pay, separate accounts for different purposes, whatever works for you. Celebrating financial wins, even small ones. And finally, forgive yourself. You made financial mistakes. Maybe some were avoidable, maybe some weren't. Either way, continuing to punish yourself doesn't help. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're excusing the behavior. It means you're releasing the shame so you can move forward. Say it. I forgive myself for the financial mistakes I've made. I'm learning, and I'm doing better. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Debt is not just a financial problem. It's a psychological, physical, emotional, and social problem that affects every area of your life. Understanding how debt impacts your brain and body isn't about making excuses. It's about having compassion for yourself and choosing effective strategies. The stress you feel is real and valid. The shame you carry is heavy, but it's not yours to carry. The system that profits from your debt deliberately uses psychological tactics to keep you paying, keep you scared, keep you silent. But you can fight back, not with anger or panic, but with clarity, knowledge, and self-compassion. Your worth as a human being has nothing to do with your credit score or your bank balance. You are not a failure because you're in debt. You're a person dealing with a difficult situation in a system that's often stacked against you. That's context, not condemnation. The path forward isn't about suddenly being good with money or magically having more willpower. It's about understanding how stress affects your brain, giving yourself tools to regulate your nervous system, facing the numbers instead of avoiding them, asking for help instead of isolating, and taking small, consistent actions even when you're scared. Debt might take years to repay, but peace of mind can start today, right now. The moment you stop letting debt define who you are, the moment you stop hiding and start facing it, the moment you reach out for support instead of suffering alone. What's one thing you're going to do differently after watching this video? What's one small step you're going to take toward taking back control? Drop it in the comments. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video helped you, subscribe. Next week, we're covering practical debt elimination strategies, snowball versus avalanche methods, negotiation tactics when bankruptcy makes sense. We'll get into the practical side, but I wanted to start here, with the psychological side, because you can't execute a financial plan if your mental health is destroyed. And if you're struggling right now, really struggling, please don't carry it alone. The 9888 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. National Foundation for Credit Counseling can connect you with free or low-cost counseling. Your life has value beyond your financial situation. You matter more than any amount of money you owe. You are not broken. You are not powerless. You are someone fighting a hard fight, and the fact that you're here learning, trying to understand, working to get better, that's strength, not weakness. The next time debt tries to tell you who you are, remember, you are not your debt. You are not your mistakes. You are a human being worthy of dignity, respect, and peace. And you can find your way through this. One breath, one day, one small step at a time.